From the Carl Chevrolet Studios in West Des Moines, welcome to Iowa Live. I am Lou, and it is time to visit with our good friend Kim Baer as we find out something in the legal world that you really need to know about. Hello, Kim. How are you?
I'm great. How are you, Lou?
We are doing really well, but it sounds like you and I are getting divorced again.
Hey, one of these days we'll get it right. Yeah.
Now, that's what we're talking about here today. We're talking about divorce in the state of Iowa.
Yes, I thought we'd talk about the divorce procedure because I think there's a lot of misconception about how the divorces work in Iowa. So.
Okay, and now is it universal around the state or is it individual?
It's individual. So for the most part, the procedures I'm talking about today are central Iowa. Each of the counties or the districts, the court districts, can decide if they want to follow that procedure or not. For the most part, it is the same, but you'd want to check with your county.
All right. Now, what about divorce in general? Do both parties have to agree on a divorce, or how does that work?
No. So in Iowa, it's no-fault divorce, which means that if you want to get a divorce, you can get a divorce. About the only thing, if you and I were getting divorced and I didn't want it, I could ask the court to order us to go to marital counseling to try to save the marriage.
Okay, so that's the option that one of the partners have if they don't really want to get divorced.
Yeah, but if I go and tell, or you go and you tell the counselor, hey, nothing's going to save this marriage, then we're going to get divorced.
Okay, so say that happens and then the procedures go on. There's usually property involved too.
Yes, there's usually property involved. I think that's another misconception. It doesn't matter whose name the property is in. So for example, if the house is in your name, it doesn't mean that I've given up any claim to it. Really what the court's looking at is what was earned, bought, accumulated during the marriage. And then the court also has the authority to look at and divide, if the court thinks it's fair, what you had before the marriage.
Okay, now speaking of marriages, because we know a lot of people nowadays are living together before they get married, and some folks are talking about common law marriage. Does that come into play at all? It
can. In Iowa, there's no set time period for marriage to be common law married. I think there's a common thought that if you've been together for 7 years or longer that you're automatically common law married, and that is not true. There's a lot of factors the court looks at. Do you hold yourself out as a married couple? Do you file tax returns together? Have you put each other on health insurance? In other words, do you hold yourself out as being married, even though you don't have the piece of paper?
So that may apply then?
It absolutely could, and it's a long factor list that we look at.
Okay, so what is the overall procedure for a divorce?
Right, so the overall procedure is someone files, the other person has to accept service or be served.
Okay.
Iowa does have what we call a cooling off period, so there's a 90-day waiting period. We can have that waived, but we have to have a good reason to do it.
Okay, talk about the pretrial. What is that about?
Right, so then the next thing that happens with a divorce is in most counties you will have a pretrial, and at the pretrial you have to exchange financial affidavits. If you and I were getting divorced and we had minor children, we have to do child support guidelines, and we have to go to a class called Children in the Middle.
Okay, now tell us about mediation too.
Yes, most counties also require mediation.
Now explain what that is.
Yes. So we use a mediator. In a lot of the counties, the attorneys attend. Some counties, attorneys don't attend. And you usually are in separate rooms, and you try to settle the case. And I would say 90 to 95% of the cases settle at mediation. So
and that's a good thing.
It's a great thing. It's a great thing because you want to be in control of how your divorce ends and how you're going to divide things up, as opposed to a judge who just picked up the file and is reading the case maybe the day before the trial.
Okay, tell us about what discovery is all about.
Yes. So if we don't settle at mediation, then we might be issuing discovery. So for example, I might issue to you, if we're going through the divorce process, interrogatories, which are written questions. I also might say, you know, Lou, I want to know what you've been doing with your credit card. So give me your credit card statements for the last several years.
All right, so that does come into play, and then it could go to trial.
And then it could go to trial, and you know, right now because of COVID, most of the trials are backed up. So we tell people you're probably looking at a year, 18 months before you're going to have a trial date, depending on the county.
Sounds like a lot of questions have to be answered. People want to get a hold of you. What's the easiest way?
Yeah, just give us a call at the Baer Law Office. We're happy to talk to you, and we can sit down and have a cup of coffee and see if we can figure it out.
All right, so you can hopefully settle these in a civil manner, and you can help them do that.
Yeah, hopefully. We'll get you from point A to point B in one piece, hopefully.
Kim Baer, so great to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you, Lou.